to Breaking Par with Bernard Sheridan, the golf instruction podcast that helps you take control of your game. Now, here's your host, the founder of Par Breakers Golf Academy and certified Golf Channel Swing Fix instructor, Bernard Sheridan.
So, Bob, welcome to Breaking Par, the podcast. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. And I see you have your GPS cert on today.
I'm ready to go.
Good. All ready to go, and I'm excited that you're here. So tell us a little bit about GPS and how you came up with this idea and how you're implementing it.
GPS is really accelerated learning by learning on the golf course. So years ago, before I became a golf professional, I was playing golf and having a great time. And as soon as I learned how to teach, I wasn't playing golf anymore. I was teaching a golf swing only. And I found that I was teaching the same thing to, all the players. And in some ways, it was bettering their swing, but it wasn't bettering their golf game. So about 20 years ago, I got involved in club fitting, which was part of the process. And then I started really getting involved in on-course performance. And so what I decided was that anything that didn't transfer to the golf course wasn't worth teaching. And so I also decided that the only way that I knew if it transferred to the golf course was to go on the golf course and find out if people were improving on the golf course. So what I found was that the driving range was good for working on the golf swing, and the golf course was good for working on the golf game, because you're presented with so many more different conditions and angles and things like that you just don't get on the driving range.
Is there a way that you implement that on the driving range too? Because I know that with a lot of golf courses, if there's a good amount of play going on out there, it's going to be real difficult for a player to work on a specific shot over and over and over again to kind of start to get the feel and fine-tune, like, let's say, a ball that's above their feet.
Yes.
Whereas if they're on the range, if there's some way to implement that or work that out, then it would be easier for them. They wouldn't be actually in the way of anybody else either.
Sure. I developed a side hill lie range mat that I slide. It's a wedge. It's shaped like a wedge, and it slides under an existing range mat. And so what I do is I try to teach people what's going to happen on those side hill lies on the driving range before we go out to the golf course. So slopes are a big part of what changes on the golf course, and slopes are a big part of how players fail on the golf course. So it's amazing to me how many players don't know that a ball above your feet is going to pull or hook, and a ball below your feet should fade or slice. And what I find I watch the tour players, and I see them struggling with different lies as well. And so that was a lot of what prompted me to determine what happens on the golf course. So I teach the 6 GPS ball flight influences, which are the golf swing that you choose, the piece of equipment that you choose, the grass condition, the slope, the wind, and the landing zone. So we know a lot about wind, we know something about landing zones, and a lot of players don't know about grass conditions and slopes and how they really affect the performance of the ball.
So when you're doing that on the range, let's say, because a lot of times when players are hitting off a mat, the condition of the turf is more ideal. In other words, it's like a fairway lie. So do you have different types of rough and things that you use for that too? as a simulation of that?
I do. I teach on one end or the other of my range, and at either end there's rough, and I can always find a bare spot to play from, and I show them how impact is affected by the conditions, by the grass condition or the slope. And I use a pointer on the golf club to show how the angle of the club changes on the slope. And I take the golf club and I place it right behind the ball so that I can show them that a bare lie, chances are, is not going to be very solid. And so some people say, well, you're teaching people to mishit it. And I say, well, they're going to mishit it on a bare lie. I just want to know what the mishit's going to be so that I can play for that to happen and I can show them what happens.
So then this way, though, they can experience firsthand in a practice session or before they get out on the course what the result will be when they encounter this type of a thing out on the golf course, as opposed to finding that out when they get there and now they make the mistake and it's too late because the shot is lost.
Right. So, for example, most of us remember when Billy Horschel failed on the last hole of the tournament last year, where he chunked it in the water. And what we barely were shown was the fact that he was on at least a 5-degree ball below his feet lie. He was trying to hit a 195-yard 6-iron, which is a big 6-iron, off of what I consider to be a weak lie. And so he was trying to hit it solid and relatively straight from a lie that suggests it's going to fade or slice. So taking a level lie intent into a sloping lie caused him, in my opinion, to fail on the shot.
So for our listeners who are not really familiar with what happens in different lies and situations, and I think that there's a lot of them out there who really don't understand what's going to happen. Can you give those listeners out there in Par Nation a little bit of insight of, let's say, what the typical ball that's below your feet is really going to do? And as that degree changes, is it more of a variable? In other words, is it a lot tougher to hit a ball that's 5 degrees below your feet as opposed, like we just spoke about, as opposed to 2 degrees below your feet?
Well, for every degree that it changes, it becomes more of a challenge. So, and what I find is about 85 to 90% of players think that the ball above your feet is an easier shot than a ball below your feet. And so the effects of a ball above or below your feet are an offline direction, a trajectory change, and a distance change. So what I do when I look at the lies, and I'm teaching people how to do this, I look at it from, number one, is the ball going to go higher or lower than your range performance? And a lot of the time, the conditions say that the ball is going to go lower. And so the next question I have, is it going to go farther or shorter than your range performance? And probably 75 to 80% of the time it's going to go a little shorter. And the last question I have is it going to go right or left? So I've kind of boiled it down to anything that has a lower lie characteristic. For example, a tight lie or a ball below your feet or a downhill lie is going to go more to the fade side. It's going to go lower and shorter. And anything that's above your feet or higher up, like on a tee or in the fluffy grass, is going to go higher, farther, and to the pull side. So the three questions are, is it going higher or lower, left or right, farther or shorter? And then the sneaky last one is, what's it going to do when it lands? So those are the 4 questions.
So what are some of the things that a student can do to adjust for that? In other words, let's say he does have a ball that is 3 degrees below his feet. He's not really going to know what the degrees are, but just as an example, a few inches below his feet. So what would a student go about trying to hit that ball and keep it on line? Would he change his alignment? Would he get down on the ball more? Would he create more knee flex? Would he choke down on the club as opposed to, in other words, like make the club feel like it's longer? What are some of the things that they would have to do?
Well, for example, here's your lie being below your feet, and your club is in this position. So what I try to teach is, what impact do you want? Do you want the club to match the surface, or do you want the club to match a level lie surface? So matching the club to the surface is the first principle. And in order to do that, if you bend your knees or you bend your waist on a ball below your feet, you're going to set that club head in opposition to the surface. You're going to be heel down instead of level. And so in many cases, I get the player into that position where the club is level with the surface. And then I ask him, well, what do you have to do to return the club to this position? And 9 times out of 10, they'll figure it out where you have to swing more upright. And when you swing more upright, it is a bit of a, for many people, it's a bit of a weaker golf swing. And so we're taking a weak golf swing, trying to hit a full swing shot, and it doesn't quite come out that way. Trying to get the club to match the surface at impact is a big key. So I see players on tour failing at that all the time, like the Billy Horschel thing.
So let's say it's they're 150 yards, ball's a little bit below their feet. They normally hit a 7-iron. Would they be probably hitting a 6-iron now instead? Yes. Probably,
yeah. It's about, I consider losses or gains in distance to be 5-yard increments. So if the ball is, say, 4 degrees below your feet, I would consider that to be a 5-yard distance loss. And if it's on a tight lie, there might be another 5-yard loss of distance. So at 150 yards on a tight lie below your feet, adding a club is probably a really good idea.
Sure, because a lot of players, they think that they're going to make it there. They'll swing a little harder. They'll add a little bit more juice to it or whatever. That can throw their tempo off a little bit. Maybe now they're not making as solid contact. Even if they are, the situation that the ball is in, the lie is in, is going to take some distance off of that shot automatically anyway. So for them to add a club now, they're pretty much going to be hitting it the same as if they were on a level lie with the normal club.
Right. So when you take your best range performance and you apply it to a lie that's other than the range performance, you're not going to get that range performance. So in many ways, trying to hit the ball consistently 150 yards on the golf course is not playing golf. So, there's all this talk about consistency, and what I try to come up with is predictability. So I want to know what the ball is going to do, or most likely going to do, versus what do I want it to do? Well, I really like hitting a really solid, high, booming 7-iron. For example, and I can do that if I play the ball on the range and if I prop it up a little bit. But on the golf course, I get tighter lies in the fairway, I get tighter rough lies in the rough. I get all kinds of grass and slope conditions that really don't allow me to hit that ball high and solid and straight. And so rather than trying to keep it online, I allow for it to go offline. So for example, a baseball player with a ball thrown low and outside is more likely going to push it, or a right-hander is going to hit it to right field.